They popped champagne under my roof, a red ribbon, gold scissors, and my daughter, on stage, claiming her legacy. "She's the new owner now," someone whispered behind me. She'd printed her initials on the gift bags, like branding cattle. My fingers brushed cold metal. Box number 712, our wedding date. The last thing in this world that still belonged to me. Inside, the deed, still in my name. She refinanced my building, gutted my floors, then toasted to a future she never truly owned. I raised her to be fearless, to dream, to lead, and maybe I let her believe, for a while, that the world could be hers. But when she gave that victory speech on my pavement, I knew it was time to remind her. Inheritance isn't just passing the torch. It's knowing when to watch them choke on your smoke and still light the match with grace. I wasn't always the kind of woman who could sit through her own erasure and still butter a roll. But you don't get to 67, past a mortgage crisis and a bypass surgery, without learning how to stay still and strike quietly. I worked in community banking, not suits and stocks, just regular folks trying to keep their lights on. You learn to read people, not by what they say, but by how they sign a check. I raised my daughter during the recession, paid off our Toyota with quarters from a Folgers can, made her learn the difference between net worth and self-worth before she ever touched a debit card. She used to call me the vault, said I never let feelings slip out. Maybe she was right. After her father passed, I didn't just bury a husband. I inherited his vision. A row of tired shophouses downtown. He said, "Fix these up, and someday she'll build something real." She took it literally. That building, the one with champagne and speeches, it was his. Bought in '93, paid in cash, deeded into a trust. My name, quietly. But somewhere along the years, people started saying, "She'll run it better than you ever could. She's got vision." And maybe I let them believe it, until the details stopped coming. She stopped copying me on renovation emails. "Spam folder issue," she said. Then I saw the van, her name stenciled across the door, followed by the invitation to a shareholders meeting. My name wasn't on the list, not even as a guest. And that's when I felt it, a quiet shift in the ground beneath everything I thought was mine. What happens when a mother becomes invisible in a building her husband left behind? My husband wasn't a flashy man. He wore the same watch for 28 years, never understood stock options, but he understood concrete and loyalty. He started buying property when our daughter was still in braces. "Land doesn't talk back," he'd say, "and a building can outlive a broken heart." He never said the words inheritance. He said insurance. Insurance that if anything ever happened to him, she'd have a foundation, something solid, even if her life didn't feel that way. So he tucked the deeds into a trust, under my name. His handwriting on the notary envelope still smudged from the day he signed it in the rain. "I want her to build," he whispered, "but only when she's ready, and only if you agree." That was the deal. But somewhere along the way, our daughter forgot there was a we in all of this. She started talking about the building like it was hers, as if the paint on the bricks erased the ink on the deed. She wasn't malicious, not yet, but she was confident in the way only people with partial knowledge can be. I think part of her assumed he had already signed it over. Maybe he said something once in passing. Maybe she just wanted to believe it badly enough. But she never asked me, not once. And I never offered. Until that shareholders meeting. Until I saw her leading a tour through the lobby like she'd bled for those tiles. And I stood there, clutching a paper invitation to a future I wasn't even written into. What happens when someone builds a future on a foundation that isn't theirs? The first red flag was beige paint, slathered over century-old brick, the kind you only choose when you're trying to please everyone and end up pleasing no one. I walked past the building one morning on my way to the bakery, and there it was, scaffolding, contractor vans, workers hauling out original woodwork like it was trash. No call, no email, no "what do you think, Mom?" Just construction, loud, proud, and fully underway. At first, I told myself it was an oversight, a scheduling mix-up. She's busy, she's got vision. Then I noticed the mail. A letter from her bank sat on the counter one afternoon. She'd used my return address, sloppy move, and they'd delivered it to my box by mistake. Loan approved, it said. I opened it. I know I shouldn't have, but something in my gut told me I had to. It was a 6-figure renovation loan, with the building listed as collateral, except the property wasn't hers to borrow against. It was still held in trust, under my name. My signature wasn't on anything. That's when my stomach dropped. A few weeks later, I found the invitation, annual shareholders meeting, downtown revitalization project, big logo, big venue, big ambition, but in small print, no mention of me, not as trustee, not as original owner, not even as a guest. She hadn't just forgotten I existed. She'd rewritten the narrative entirely. Then came the kicker. I walked into the back room where I keep the old filing cabinet, half expecting to find nothing, but tucked between a life insurance statement and a yellowed utility bill was a copy of the deed, crisp, stamped, my name, only mine. Everything she built, she'd leveraged against a foundation she never owned. And what happens when the scaffolding isn't just physical, but emotional? When a daughter builds a future without asking if the ground is hers to stand on? I didn't call a lawyer, not yet. Instead, I brewed a pot of coffee, took the deed, and sat at the kitchen table like I had 1,000 mornings before, except this time I wasn't making a grocery list. I was looking at proof, not suspicion, not instinct, black and white proof. My name, no co-signer, no transfer, no clause naming her. The building, the foundation of her so-called empire, was still mine. She'd spent months giving speeches, pitching investors, hiring designers. She'd printed pamphlets with her name in gold foil. She even had her daughter, my granddaughter, handing out business cards at school. And yet, the one signature that mattered had never moved. I sat there a long time, trying to feel angry, but what I felt instead was disappointment. Not because she wanted to build something, but because she never thought to ask who built it first. I made copies of the deed, one for my records, one for the safe, and one for my lawyer, just in case. Then I opened her renovation binder. Yes, I'd borrowed it from her car last week. Don't ask how. Inside were contracts, unsigned by me, blueprints, invoices for work tied to a property she didn't legally control. She was building on sand, polished, overfunded sand. I left everything as I found it, except for one thing. I slipped a Post-it note inside the front page. No signature, no lecture, just 5 words, written in my neatest print. Whose name is on this? Then I closed the binder, put it back in her trunk, and went upstairs to iron my Sunday blouse, because I had a meeting of my own to attend that week, not a shareholders one, a legal one. She thought I'd stay quiet, but silence, when it holds the truth, becomes its own kind of thunder. She came over that Sunday, unannounced, like always, sunglasses on, voice too bright, carried a paper bag with scones from the farmer's market, like carbs could fix this. "Mom," she said, dropping them on the counter, "we need to talk." I didn't answer, just nodded toward the table, where the deed now sat, neatly framed in plastic, right next to her renovation binder. She didn't sit, didn't touch the paper, didn't ask how I got it, just stared, tight-lipped, waiting for me to speak first. But I didn't. Let her feel the silence she'd left me in. Finally, her voice cracked through it. "You had this the whole time?" She shook her head. "You watched me build everything and said nothing?" I stayed still. Then came the gut punch. "You never believed in me. You were just waiting for me to fail." The words echoed, sharper than I thought she could throw. She grabbed the binder, slammed it shut, didn't look back, and then she was gone. The scones stayed untouched on the counter, still warm. I stared at the door for a while, then back at the table, at the deed, at the empty space beside it, and for a moment I didn't see a project manager with branding. I saw a 5-year-old in an Easter dress asking if I liked her drawing. I had supported her in every way I knew how, but support without permission feels like sabotage, and silence, it seems, can echo louder than betrayal. Some fights don't need shouting, just a closed door, a cold counter, and a truth no one's ready to hold. I didn't call to argue. I called the county recorder's office, asked for a certified copy of the deed, then requested a public notice be placed in the local registry, confirming legal ownership and rights to lease. Just facts, no drama. By Wednesday, I had a folder in my hands, stamped, signed, and sealed. That afternoon, I walked into her workspace. No warning. Her assistant froze when she saw me, but I smiled politely and handed over an envelope. "For your records," I said. Inside, a copy of the deed, a notarized letter stating that, as legal owner, I was open to negotiating lease terms for any active tenant or project partner, effective immediately. I didn't raise my voice, didn't ask her to explain herself. I simply dropped off reality. She opened the envelope like it might bite, read the first page, then the second. Her lips pressed tight. No witty retort this time, no branding lingo, just silence. "Are you evicting me?" she finally whispered. "No," I said. "I'm giving you the chance to stay. Legally, as a tenant." She blinked, the kind of blink that comes before someone cries or breaks something. I didn't wait to see which. I turned and left. Because when someone builds a house of mirrors, you don't need to break the glass. You just show them the reflection. What happens when the builder realizes the blueprint was never theirs? When power shifts not through rage, but through paperwork. The email arrived Friday morning. Quarterly stakeholders meeting, Monday, 10 Hontuk a.m. Conference Room B, downtown chamber building. Presentations encouraged. I replied with one word, confirmed. I didn't tell her I'd be there, didn't ask if I could present, because I didn't need permission to speak about what was mine. That Monday, I wore navy, pressed slacks, pearl earrings, a leather folder tucked under my arm. No one noticed me at first. They saw her, standing at the podium, laser pointer in hand, presenting projections and renderings and next phase buzzwords. She had the crowd, until she didn't, until I stood, and said simply, "I'd like to add something," as the legal owner of the building being discussed. The room went still. You could feel the tension ripple, papers shifting, eyes darting. She froze, looked at me like she'd seen a ghost, or worse, her mother holding receipts. I opened the folder. Inside, copies of the deed, the trust, the renovation contracts without my signature, and one slide, just one, projected behind me, ownership assumption. I didn't raise my voice, didn't need to. She tried to interrupt, but the moderator cleared his throat. "Let her finish," he said. So I did. 3 minutes, just enough to clarify what had been claimed and what had never legally changed hands. When I sat down, she didn't speak, not to me, not to anyone. She gathered her laptop and left without looking back. People murmured. A few approached me after. One man said, You handled that with grace. I nodded, but inside it didn't feel like grace. It felt like loss, packaged in poise. What do you do when reclaiming what's yours makes you the villain in your own family's story? The next morning, I mailed her the lease, 12 pages, standard commercial terms, market rate rent, triple net responsibilities, initial term, 10 years, renewable, at my discretion. I didn't add a cover letter, didn't attach a note. She'd know what it meant. 2 days later, she showed up on my porch. No makeup, no heels, just a folder in her hand and a hollow look in her eyes. She sat without speaking, flipped through every page. Her fingers trembled a little when she hit the line that said, "Lessee agrees to pay backdated rent effective from the date of occupancy." "I can't afford this," she said. I looked at her, softly. "Neither could I, when I paid the property taxes while you installed chandeliers." She didn't argue. She just asked, "Is there any way we can work something out?" I didn't raise my voice, didn't gloat. I simply slid a pen across the table and said, "This is me working something out." She signed, quietly, not with defeat, but with realization. That's the thing about truth. It doesn't scream. It just sits in the corner of the room, waiting to be acknowledged. I didn't want rent. I wanted recognition, not for the checkbook, not for the deed, but for the decades of quiet scaffolding a mother builds around her child. People think support is loud, cheering, clapping, funding, but sometimes support is invisible. It's staying silent when you could say, "I told you so." It's paying taxes you never mentioned. It's holding the weight of something until they're strong enough to carry it themselves. She thought I was trying to control her. I was just trying to protect the only thing her father ever asked me to guard. Not the building, but her. And now she pays her rent on time. We speak, sometimes, carefully, cautiously, like two people rebuilding on different floors. I don't know if she understands yet. That ownership and love don't always speak the same language. But I hope one day she will. Because what we call support often goes unspoken until the silence costs something real. Sometimes I still walk past the building, not to check up on her, not to relive what happened, just to remember what we built together. There's a planter outside now, bright yellow mums in the fall. Her touch, not mine, but I water them when no one's looking. Funny, isn't it? How the loudest arguments are the ones we never say out loud. How love and pride can live in the same room and still misunderstand each other completely. I don't know if she sees me the way I see her. Not yet. Maybe one day she'll tell her own daughter this story, and maybe she'll get some of it wrong, but maybe she'll get the part that matters. That silence isn't the absence of love. Sometimes it's what holds everything up. And maybe I wasn't just protecting the deed. Maybe I was protecting the version of her I wasn't ready to lose. If your name was never on the deed, would you have asked who paid for the foundation? Thank you for listening.